great to have two ladies who I last worked with at the Tennis Victoria Premier League. It was back, just before Christmas. They've both been on the program in different forms. Sarah Stone, Beti Sekulovski. Great to have you both in the studio. Good to see you, Sarah.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having us back. It's going to be a great night. Talking tennis with Boo all day, every day is quite exciting, but to get to talk with you about it as well, it's awesome.
So, Sarah, still the CEO of the WTCA, which is something you're very passionate about, the Women's Tennis Coaches Association, which is a great hub for women's tennis, got an Australian base, an American base as well, and you're also both involved now with the Champion Academy of Tennis. You're the Director of Tennis, Beti, you're involved as well, and I want to sort of dissect a bit of that tonight. But if I just ask you generally just about the landscape of Australian tennis right now, you're in it every day. You're out on practice courts, you're hitting balls with players, you're talking to juniors, you're just observing. Beti, you've been inside TA and you've been outside. Just what do you think the state of tennis is here in Australia? Because it's a topic we discuss a lot, obviously, on our show.
Yeah, thanks, Brett, and thanks for having us. I had this question asked to me not very long ago. Actually, was what is your difference now that you're out in the private market versus in TA? And it's just I feel like I'm able to connect with generally, a lot more of the athletes. Obviously at TA I was working with, a select few. Now I'm coaching a lot more. And it's really interesting, able to connect with these kids on the outside a little more just because we have them in our program, we have them for 4 or 5 hours of the day. So there's a lot going on in that day and there's a lot to get to know about them. And look, I think it's definitely no lie. They're not travelling a lot. Our Victorian kids have probably suffered a little bit over the last 2 years due to COVID. It's shown in some capacity, I guess, at tournaments and whatnot, but it's been fantastic to be able to be in a program at the moment where we can see them consistently every day and hopefully have a larger impact on their development.
Okay, so tell us about this private academy. Tell us the basis of setting it up and why you felt it was sort of needed.
We set it up because nothing like that exists in Australia. I came from spending a long time in the US, probably around 11 years, ran a homeschool there before I came back. They're doing a great job at KDV. I think that's a great place for players to go and train.
On the Gold Coast, yep.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Bunty's doing an awesome job. They've got a great crew. And come back to into Melbourne, there's nothing else that's really a full-time option for kids. There was another program that doesn't run any longer that got some traction a few years ago, and players actually really like that, and they're looking for that one-stop shop where they know that their fitness is going to be taken care of and their hitting and other players, people to work with. One of the most difficult things for parents is just trying to find practice partners for their kids. So the state of tennis in Australia at the moment is it's a little bit disconnected. The kids haven't had the opportunity to compete. They're not really sure what the level's like around the rest of the world or where they rate. It's almost like a false sense of where we're at because we've been kind of stalled in our development here. So we're trying to now, in an academy base, just trying to get enough volume in these players. When we started with them, they could not do very much of a load, like not even close to the amount of load that they should be doing compared to players their same age around the rest of the world. So we had to start pretty slowly and build the players up from there. And that's what we've gone about building. And Beti's done an excellent job of creating a high-performance environment, which I think is something that didn't exist very much in the private sector before what we got started.
So just help me out here. So we've got TA, who obviously have their programs and different things they run, the academy up in Brisbane and so forth, and we see the state squads, and that all came out of the performance review a couple of years ago. So who are the kids that you're attracting? Where are they coming from, and why are they maybe coming to your academy, Beti?
Look, I think I've got a fantastic relationship with a lot of the players. I think I would say across the state. And look, luckily in my position previously, I got to meet a lot of players and I got to meet them through TA, being in various different roles. But recently these players I've known them since they were 12 years old through my position at TA. A lot of them were in the, junior development squads that we had at TA years gone by. And once I left TA, look, a lot of them have actually followed me into the program, and once they discovered that we were doing this, we seemed to get a lot more traction. what we've really been able to build, and look, it's not how we set it out to be, but I think it's very rare to find two female coaches coaching in the private sector, and we have an abundance of female players. I think we it's pretty rare that you find that, and I think they're very excited by that, coming into a squad every morning and every afternoon and having an abundance of female players to compete against, to train alongside, to go through all these things, their everyday training regimes. It's really been quite exciting, hasn't it, Stoney? I mean, it's been quite interesting for us to wake up every morning and you go to training and you see, you could find 10 players on the court at once, and we get sometimes, players just wanting to come in and practice for the day, and it's an exciting place to be, I think, at the moment for us. It's great to see so many different faces and come across so many different levels of development.
She's humble, isn't she?
Humble.
They come because she's a hot shot. She's a Grand Slam finalist coach. She's done an excellent job. She was very popular. Yeah, she's worked with a lot of good players.
Yep.
Storm Sanders, Dasha. Yep, worked with Dasha. Did a lot.
No, I'd have to go. I didn't work with Dasha. Right?
You did. You did a lot of
helping out Jared Ma.
That was the day where I got my camera out. Maybe that day. But she's been on court, with a lot of players, and a lot of people have come through, and they know what a quality coach she is. And I've been lucky to slide back in alongside Beti. She's the director of high performance at our academy, and she's built a solid reputation for developing relationships with players and making them realise that they're important. And that's one thing that where there's not a lot of opportunity always in the governing system in countries.
Yep.
In the private sector, those players need to feel important, and that's really what we're about.
And that was a big part of the performance review, wasn't it? Is that if you were coaching a young prospect and you started coaching them at 5, 6, 7, you put all the work into working on the fundamentals, teaching them the game, and then if they were any good, they'd sort of get poached, if you like, or for a better word, and then the private sector coach would sort of be left behind. And the whole aim with that was to keep that connection, wasn't it, with the private sector coach, so they stay part of the journey.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough one, but I think, right now in terms of what we're trying to build is this that solid connection. Yep. They know what they're getting. They know what their plans are. They know who they're on court with. They feel, I would say, like a sense of family at the moment. I think that's one of the words they use a lot is they do. They see us as a family. And I think one of the biggest fear factors, I think, for probably parents or question marks that we got was, okay, it's squad. How does it work? Where do they get their privates? Where do they do this? That was a big thing because I think our culture in Australia is dominated by private lessons. And I think one thing that's, Sarah's brought in so many positive things to this, and she even sort of switched my mind around with this was, how about we run our model like, they do it a little bit in the States that you experience is let's run our private sessions. Our model is we're running an academy, but within that academy, we're also integrating our private lessons. And these players are then able to have their specifics and then throw them back into a live ball situation. And I think that's worked incredibly well. It's utilised the time well also in our squads. It's utilising our staff well. We've got a great team. And I think that was one thing that's really different to what we've been able to integrate and Sarah brought over from all her experiences overseas.
No doubt. We need to slip in a break. We'll continue this discussion on the other side. Sarah Stone, Beti Sekulovski in the studio with me. Great to have Melbourne's leading synthetic grass court surface and construction specialist, ASTI Tennis Courts, with us, trusted by Melbourne tennis clubs and councils. Check out aste.com.au. You can go shopping at Tennis Direct while you're listening to us tonight, tennisdirect.com.au. You spend over $150, free delivery, rackets, accessories, all the goodies delivered to your front door. Use that promo code FIRSTSERVE10. More of the First Serve. Your calls, 1300 736 736 next. On the First Serve, Brett Phillips in the chair tonight, and thanks to the 5pm Collective, Australian Alcohol Delivered. Use the code FIRSTSERVE to get 10% off your first order. 5pm Collective. Beti Sekulovski and Sarah Stone are in the studio with me. I think anyone who knows anything about tennis knows the names of my studio guests here tonight. Talking the world of tennis, talking coaching. They're setting up a course and underway with the Champion Academy. Of course, both involved in that pretty heavily. There's a couple on the text I want to get to very shortly, but we should mention one result we didn't mention earlier was Beti. Jamie fooled us overnight, and I'm a big fan of Jamie. She's been in this very studio a couple of years ago, beat the former world number 19, Donna Vekic, who slipped outside the top 100 at the moment, but that was a good scalp in Zagreb, I think a 60K ITF overnight.
Yeah, it was honestly, Jamie's been just building up solidly, honestly, since the Australian Open. I think the doubles really did something for her, and so it should. She's had a really solid couple of months with the Australian pro circuits, and it was really funny getting a text message from her this morning. It was she said, "Betty, you won't believe it. It was so funny. I had 100 people sitting in the stands watching me play a 60K." She's like, "I'm not used to that."
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty funny. And she loves playing in front of a crowd, and she's in a really good headspace. And I'm hoping that she's going to have a fantastic summer in Europe.
Because she can strike the ball really well. I mean, she's had some injuries across the journey. So where do you think, where do you have her in the big spectrum of women's tennis?
Look, I mean, at the moment, she's really trying to head inside, wanting to get inside 150. I think at the end of the year, I think that's really her primary goal at the moment. And look, all being well, if she can stay injury-free and play some solid tennis, we're looking more for solid performances rather than anything else at the moment, and stay injury-free. I really don't like saying where someone can be. I really hope that she can end the year somewhere around that 150 mark.
We hope so. So I think we all acknowledge it's been a tough couple of years, right, for Tennis Australia and for our players to travel and have that continuity of playing tennis. So just the quota of players to coaches, Sarah, we were sort of talking about it off air earlier today with the National Academy and so forth, and just take us inside your thoughts on that, because obviously there's been the performance review. I think there's a coach review that has been going on for 12, 18 months, which I think is going to be wrapped up pretty shortly, but just give us your feelings on that.
Yeah, we were talking about the numbers, the number of players with the coach. I think that's something. What we took into our academy was similar to what they do at Boletaries, 4 players to a coach, as much as we pretty much always two to a court, unless we're doing something specific where we're using half a court. And one of the things we've found, we've got some top players and their parents have tons of money, but they're only able to get a couple hours a week with their coach, which is fine if the coach can then have eyes over them in a squad situation. But, if you've got players around the world that are having eyes on them 20 hours a week in their development, and someone else is getting 1 hour and then just trying to make up the development of their own game along the way, you're behind. I mean, you're behind from the get-go. And it is definitely not a shortage of investment from parents. They're willing to invest, but that's the structure we've tried to create, that we're on the court with these players, 12, 14 hours a week. And we're seeing some good results, and it's been a great adventure. And I think you can't always do that. In at Melbourne Park, there's probably many more players under the number of coaches there. I personally would rather see when those players go into the national program, and I know it's a money thing, but you need to have much fewer players working with coaches when they go in there for development, in my opinion.
So how do you have that conversation, Betty, with parents, for example, who can see some talent in their kids, they want their kids to go somewhere, and it is an investment. It's a risk. It's a sport where there's no absolute guarantees. You're venturing into this huge global stage where it's tough to make it. And you're telling them, well, if they're going to be any chance, they do need to put in X amount of hours. It's going to cost this much. Yep. How does that conversation go?
Yeah, look, it depends on the parent and the relationship you've built with that parent. But I think, sometimes it goes really, really well, and there's times where I have a feeling that maybe parents feel like you're ripping them off. Well, you've just said, they're doing 3 privates, or they're doing this many privates, and they're doing squad. Oh, that's going to cost us so and so, and they're not used to spending that much on their child's development. They might have another child in the family that is not getting as much attention or the investment put in, so that it creates strain on the families. And look, there's a lot going on that we don't probably not aware of as coaches, but at the same time, I think your actions as a coach speak louder than words. And when you're investing your time for free, generally, going to tournaments, watching players play, spending endless hours on the phone, endless hours looking at stats, footage, that is an investment that they're not paying for at times. And I think that's not seen by parents. Sometimes we know things about an athlete that their parents might not even know what they're going through. And they don't realise the role that coaches are actually playing is they're wearing several hats, and we're dealing with a lot. And especially when you've got a lot of players that are under our umbrella. I mean, we care for every single one of them. And it's sometimes it's a hard day. Sometimes it's an easy day. Sometimes it's not about tennis at all. Sometimes it is. But these are the things that, are very hard to explain to parents, and that, you're not there to rip them off. You're there to give them an understanding of what the investment looks like if you want to be good.
Yep.
And in this country, like Sarah said, we are behind the 8 ball. We don't get players travelling until they're probably, I would say, anywhere between 16 and 18 as their first trip, unless they're making a Billie Jean Cup, Junior Fed Cup team, as they would have said back in the day. They're not getting that exposure unless they're top notch in their age group. And I think that's too late.
So just to round out, because we're going to run out of time, so it sort of leads me into, and I wanted to put it out to both of you about UTR, because as you know, you listen to the show, it's been a topic of hot discussion the last 6 weeks. We've spoken to TA, we've spoken to coaches, players, we've had parents' feedback. There's a lot going on in that space since it's been rolled out officially from January 1. So we know TA is heavily linked to it, invested into it. But there seems to be a lot more negative feedback than positive feedback. So if you're any chance of making it, how are you just assessing the whole UTR at the moment, where TA are using it as a rating and a ranking, which is unique to anywhere else in the world, Sarah?
Well, that's a bit of a tricky question, really, isn't it? I'm very familiar with UTR before it came on board in Australia, being in the States. I will tell you that I currently coach players who are rated around the 9.1 to 9.3 bracket. That should probably, I would imagine, be close to an 11 in my view. I had 13-year-olds that were rated about an 8.4, that now if they played the players we have at 16 that are 8.4, our 8.4s would have beat them love and love. Like, I know their exact level. So I do believe our UTR rankings are below where they actually should be, which hurts players, because unless on the girls' side, if you're under a 10 UTR, you're going to really struggle to get into a top D1 school. One of the girls I work with is the head coach at Yale, and I said to her, what would be your minimum? And she said, absolute minimum is a 9.
Yep.
And our 9s, as I said, should be close to an 11. So it's really, in a way, hurting our current crop of players. But, we're taking some players over to the States, which I said to you earlier, trying to go over on the July school holidays to get them against some UTRs that are actually higher than them, but they are the same level as them, so that they can try to bump their rankings up to really help them get into college. So I don't know. It's going to be tough, because I don't know how we make up that time.
Yep, a lot to pull apart. We're going to continue the discussion. We're going to circle back to Tennis Australia next week on the program to see how they've assessed all the feedback over the last 3 months and what measures they're maybe putting in place to make some possible adjustments. Give the Academy a quick plug before we go, and how can people find you?
It's Champion Academy. They can find us on Instagram. That's probably where anyone finds anyone these days. Tennis Champion Academy. It's just one word, and hit us with a DM and we'll get back to you.
Great stuff. Good to talk some tennis. We'll have to do it again, because this is always too short on a Monday night. We'll do it again, definitely.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks very much,
Sarah.
Sarah.
We'll take a break, come back, wrap up with all the other news of the week.